Today we are going to discuss biomechanics. This is a picture from Kapanji, Biomechanics book written by Kapanji, and it shows what normal should look like biomechanically. Notice how the person is straight up and down from the front, as you see that. From the side, they have a curve in their neck, mid-back, lower back, and sacrum. These curves oppose one another, and the anterior point that we're placing here is the sella turcica. At the front of the sella turcica, if we take an X-ray and find it and drop a plumb line, that plumb line should go through the anterior 1/4 of C4-5 disc, should go through the anterior tip of T12, and should go just behind the acetabulum and all the way through the front of the ankle, which means that that's perfect biomechanics from this plane, which we call the sagittal plane. And when we look at it from the front, the center, which is the center of the glabella between the two eyeballs, there should go through the center of the spine, center all the way through the center of the coccyx, and all the way to perfectly in between each of the feet. Wanted you to see this picture because that is the real normal. That is optimal normal. And so you have a chance to see what that looks like. But most people aren't that kind of normal. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. Biomechanics. What is biomechanics and why is it important? Bio is life, and mechanics are the mechanics of the system, the structure and the mechanical system that it creates. This curve system is more than just a bunch of curves. It creates levers, and levers give you your mechanical advantage. Was it Archimedes said, give me a lever big enough and a place to long enough and a place to put it on, and I'll move the world. Well, these levers give you leverage factors or force multipliers that allow you to get more done with less effort. And so the way the system is set up is to give you the optimum output with the least amount of input when it's in play. And the entire system is built to work this way. All of the joints, the discs, the ligaments, all of it is set up to work optimally with this curve system. And so when we draw it out mechanically, from the front, it should look like this with the pelvis, okay? And when we look at it from the side, this is skull and jaw, and here's the curve system. There's the sacrum, okay? Now, this curve in the neck blends into the curve in the mid-back, blends into the curve in the lower back, and then into the sacrum. And notice how there's a curve on the sacrum itself. These are actual units or lever arms. That's how they're meant to work. They're 24 pieces parts, but they're not meant to work as pieces parts. They're meant to work as levers, which is like a stick. And so the curve in your neck is a combination of 3 levers. Unit 1, which is the skull and C1. Unit 2, which is C2 through C5. Unit 3, which is C5 down to T7. And so that creates that curve, plus it starts the curve in the mid-back. And that lever comes down to T7, which meets with Unit 4. It's 1, 2, 3 unit. 4 is from T7 down to L3, and then Unit 5 is L3 down to L4-5, and then the Unit 6 is the pelvis and sacrum. But then we also have a 7, 8, and 9, which is below it. 7, 8, and 9, which is the foot. And so that's the lever system, and it's meant to be so that the sella turcica, which is where the pituitary gland sits in it, the front of that is the center of mass on any skull. We're all shaped differently, but that is the center of mass on any skull. And if we drop a plumb line through that, it should go through the anterior 1/4 of C4, should go through the anterior tip of T12, and should, my drawing isn't to scale the way it should be, because should go through the back of the acetabulum, and then should go through in the front of the ankle, so that literally gravity is holding you up. And from the front, it should go straight down to the equidistant between the feet. That's true biomechanics. Well, most people don't get that, and the way we develop it, because we're not born with it, we're born with one curve called the fetal curve, which is like this. The thoracic curve, it goes throughout the entire body. And then mom starts to put you on the hip, and you start to look up a little bit. And then after a while, mom starts to put you on the floor, and you look up, where's mom? Mom! And as you're looking for mom, you're developing the curve, the muscles that support that curve, the neurology that drives it in the local area, the neurology above it, the reflexogenic systems that control it. And at the same time, you're growing your brain, which is really cool how that all works together at the same time. Then you start to push up, and as you push up, your guts, which are big at that time, it's that way, not because you're fat, but just because they get a little ahead to give you some mass, so that when you push up into a crawling position, they pull your tummy forward and pull a curve into your lower back, so that when you start crawling, and as you're looking head forward, you're developing that curve, both of the curves, the muscles that support that curve, the neurology that drives it, the reflexogenic systems that control it locally, and at the same time you're developing your brain. You're also neurologically developing this cross-crawl system. The first crawling is side to side. We talk about that a lot neurologically, that it's like a lizard, or they call it neurology, or I like better the army man, where you're crawling under the barbed wire, right, and you're staying really low. It looks more like a lizard, and you're developing the right-sided system and the left-sided system, but they can't work together. Then as we get to cross-crawl, we start to rotate in opposite rotations against each other, and the left side, the top works with the right side bottom, the right side top works with the left side. But it all happens as you're face down, so that when you go to stand up, you don't have to worry about developing that system. You're more polishing it and improving it, but it's already there. Now all you have to do is not fall down. Feel the sensors in your head telling you, whoa, whoa, I'm going to fall, or I'm in the middle of a fall, and gravity's going to be harsh on me right now. So that's how that system is developed. But most people, especially in our world, in our era, and many of our generations here, have not been developing the curves like they should, because of swings, Johnny jump ups, walkers, and just walking too soon. Then we start to add bad postural positions, injuries, and all kinds of things like that. Bad sleeping postures and positions, which are crushing the discs and that. And so we don't get them in the first place. I see a lot of patients that come in with a reversal of the curve in the neck. They'll come in with their chiropractic x-rays, and the chiropractic x-rays are in the standing position usually, which is a functional curve system. When you look at it from the side, and they'll say, well, I've got a curve in my lower back. And I'll say, well, I don't know. They say, well, can't you see that? Well, that is an anatomical neutral x-ray, and it's an anatomical analysis of a functional curve system. When I stand up, I put a bigger curve in my lower back and mid-back and neck in order to be able to stand up against gravity. It's not the curve that you have to work with. That's why here at Advanced Neurospinal Solutions, we take our x-rays in the seated position so that we can see the true curve system that we have to work with. It puts 30% more stress on the discs to sit than it does to stand, 50% more than lying. And so when we take that same patient who literally has brought his x-rays from the regular chiropractor and has that curve, and we take the x-rays in the seated position, almost 100% of the time, that curve, especially in the upper lumbar, is either not there or reversed. And that's part of the issue. We got to put that part of the curve back, or put a curve in the first place, or stop the reversal. But putting that curve system is what we've been about for the last 17 years. We use the theories, principles, and concepts that Burl Pettibon came up with. We've also modified it particularly for scoliosis, and found that it works very well in improving the distance that we can bring the patient, how far along we can bring that curve system, and how far along we can actually improve their function over time. Because at the end of the day, we like the x-rays to look pretty, and that's fun and very motivational. But at the end of the day, I want optimal function in that person. I want them to be able to do things that they may never have been able to do in the past at all. And so that's what we do here. But biomechanics are the foundation of what we do. And if you don't know what normal is, you don't know how far off you are, and you don't know how to bring them back towards normal. I talk to a lot of doctors and they say, well, it's not even really clear what normal is and why we'd need to have it. Well, you've already seen that the biomechanical factors it's built to work that way, and it allows you to use less energy. You use about 30% of your brain energy, or your energy in your body, to stand up against gravity, assuming that you have a perfect biomechanical system. It can be up to 90%, which doesn't leave you with much. So automatically, by fixing this system, you're going to have more energy all throughout the day. And that's one of the most common things I hear in here. We get some pretty bad cases, and yet we hear often, wow, I can't believe how much energy I have now. And the second most common phrase is, I didn't realize how much energy I had lost until I started getting it back. And so these are the kind of things we hear, even though they're coming in for massive pain syndromes, autoimmune disorders, stroke, traumatic brain injury. I mean, all kinds of things that we see in here from a structural and from a neurological point of view. MS and post-polio and lots of other issues. And we're working with them from a functional point of view. But from a biomechanical point of view, we also know that we learned from Alf Brieg, who was a neurosurgeon, and I'm going to put this up so that we can look at it, and I'll zoom in on it for you. And here's another picture, and this is from Alf Brieg. He's a neurosurgeon back in Sweden, and he took a group of MS patients that were dying of MS, and cut the backs of the vertebra off, and this is actually from the study. Cut the backs of the vertebra off, pounded them into a curve, and titanium chicken wired them into that curve, and their MS symptoms went away. Well, here's a normal curve. Here it is on the x-ray. There's the spinal cord and the nerve roots. You can see how the spinal cord is lax. It has folds and bends, and the nerve roots, which the nerve roots in here in the neck, they go into the hand, especially in the lower neck, they all go all the way into the hand, okay, in the lowest part of the neck. And here's a reversal of the curve. There it is on the x-ray. There's the spinal cord and the nerve roots. You can see how there is a stretch on the spinal cord and on the nerve roots. Now, what Brieg found was when you do that, you decrease the conductivity of the nerves, which means the nerves don't fire as easy. But that's not the really ugly part. It also decreases the blood flow within the cord. So you can imagine, if you stretch a rubber band, it gets thinner. Well, if you stretch a spinal cord, it gets, that's right, thinner. It gets thinner. And that decreases the capillary beds, their size. And those red blood cells have to line up single file to get through it. And if they can't get in there, we are literally killing off that spinal cord over time. Now, it's meant to be able to stretch. Brieg himself says the parenchyma of the spinal cord is built to be able to stretch, but it's not meant to have that stretch constantly on us. And that's what they were having. And it wasn't their MS that they had that was giving them the problems. It was the decrease in blood flow along with the MS. And by getting the restoration of the blood flow, by putting that curve back in, which took the stretch off the spinal cord and brainstem, and he described it as what's called the pons cord track. Now the pons cord track means it's stretching way up into the brain. It's stretching way up into the brain, into the pons. When we look at the brain and the spinal cord, the pons is right, here's the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain, and then you've got the brain around it, and then you got the cerebellum back here, which is connected to the pons. It's pulling all the way up into the deep inside the cranial vault and pulling on the pons itself, that's got the nerves that go into your face. They also receive lots of information and control your face, but also that's where all the tracks cross over. Pons means bridge, and that's where we bridge. When stuff that's on the right side crosses over and goes to the left, stuff that's on the left side crosses over and goes to the right. And it happens. Much of it happens in the pons, some of it in the medulla. But in terms of stretching on that cord, that's one of the reasons, and the pons, one of the reasons we've got to get that curve system back. It's not just about getting that optimum biomechanics. It's not just about getting rid of pain, which is what usually brings patients in here, but it's also about relieving the stress on the cord and brainstem to get the proper blood flow. That automatically gets energy to the patient too. Imagine if you've got a major part of your central nervous system is not getting the blood flow, and I see this a lot particularly with MS patients. They have a decrease in energy and strength, and I'll just have them lay on the molds several times a day, and as they lay on the molds, they're restoring blood flow, and automatically they're starting to get more energy fairly quickly by improving the blood flow to those tissues. And so that's what we're working to accomplish. We've also seen very good results with Chiari malformation, syringomyelia, which is when you look at the skull, the cerebellum has two little things. They call them tonsils, but they're actually the flocculi of the flocculonodular lobe of the cerebellum. They get sucked down in here with where the hole is called the foramen magnum. They get sucked down in here along with the medulla, and they press on each other, and it creates all kinds of havoc, balance disorders, and plus you've got all your stuff that keeps you alive, awake, and alert is all in the medulla. You've got multiple nuclei in there that are responsible for that, plus your reticular activating system is down there, which you want to knock somebody out. You've seen Mike Tyson hit guys right there, and it looked like he didn't hit them at all, and bam, they were gone. He just shocked that area. Well, we put that curve back into their neck, get the stretch off the cord, so now the cord and medulla are not pushing back on the flocculi, and the flocculi aren't pushing back on are pushing back on the medulla itself, and we also changed the pitch angle of the skull in C1 so that it's a perfect 18 degrees, so that it has the maximum opening for those structures to go in. I'm not gonna get rid of the Chiari or the syringomyelia, but I'm gonna get rid of the stretch and get the pitch angles and that to their optimal position to give it the greatest amount of room so that it doesn't have insult on that. And so from a biomechanics point of view, and we could talk much longer, we have seminars that we teach, 15-hour weekend seminars on this, and we go on and on about biomechanics and why it's important. But I hope this gave you some concept of why we're fixing the spine and using the concept of normal and why it's important. Thanks.